I opened the DNA test results, expecting to confirm what I already knew, but instead discovered my entire life was built on a lie. My daughter was 5 years old, and I'd been the perfect dad until a random conversation with my brother changed everything forever. What the DNA test revealed destroyed my marriage, exposed years of deception, and led to the most heartbreaking decision I ever had to make. My name is Ryan, and for 5 years, I thought I was living the dream. I had a beautiful wife named Emma, a gorgeous daughter named Lily, and a comfortable life in suburban Manchester. Emma and I met at university. She was studying psychology and I was in engineering. We connected instantly over our shared love of terrible horror movies and Sunday morning lines. We dated for 3 years before I proposed on a beach in Greece during sunset. It was perfect. She said yes immediately. And we got married 6 months later in a small ceremony with close family and friends. A year into our marriage, Emma got pregnant. We were both thrilled. I went to every ultrasound appointment, read all the parenting books, painted the nursery, myself in soft lavender, because we were having a girl. Lily was born on a rainy Tuesday in October. She had a full head of dark hair and the most piercing blue eyes I'd ever seen. I fell in love with her the moment they placed her in my arms. I was there for everything: her first smile, her first word, which was Dada, her first steps. I changed nappies at 3 a.m., read bedtime stories in funny voices, built elaborate pillow forts in the living room. Emma went back to work when Lily turned 1. She was a therapist at a private practice. I adjusted my schedule so I could do more school runs and pickups. I loved being an involved dad. Lily and I had our special routines: Saturday morning pancakes, trips to the park to feed the ducks, evening dance, parties in the kitchen to whatever pop song she was obsessed with that week. She had my sense of humor, or at least, I thought she did. She cracked these little jokes and laughed at her own cleverness. Just like I did. She was smart, creative, kind, everything I could have hoped for in a daughter. Emma was a good mom, attentive, loving, always there for Lily's important moments. But over the years, I noticed our marriage had lost some of its spark. We'd become more like roommates than partners. We rarely had date nights anymore. Our conversations revolved around Lily's schedule or household tasks. The physical intimacy had dropped off significantly. I assumed it was just normal marriage stuff. Then, one Sunday afternoon, my older brother James came over for lunch. He was a solicitor, successful, unmarried, the kind of guy who worked 80-hour weeks and loved it. James had always been polite to Emma, but they'd never been particularly close. He was more interested in spending time with Lily, teaching her chess, bringing her books about space and dinosaurs. That day, while Emma was in the kitchen and Lily was watching cartoons, James and I were having a beer in the garden. He seemed nervous, kept adjusting his collar, clearing his throat. Finally he said, "Mate, I need to tell you something, and you're going to hate me for it, but I can't keep quiet anymore. It's eating me alive, and you deserve to know the truth." My stomach dropped. I asked what he was talking about. He took a deep breath and said, "I saw Emma last month in town. She was with some bloke. They were having coffee, and they looked very cozy." I laughed it off, told him Emma had male friends. From work, maybe it was a colleague. But James shook his head, said, "No, this wasn't friendly. This was intimate." He saw them holding hands. She kissed him when they said goodbye. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I wanted to defend Emma, to say James was mistaken, but the way he looked at me, so serious, so concerned, I knew he wasn't making it up. He showed me a photo he'd taken from across the street. Emma and a tall man with sandy hair sitting at an outdoor cafe, their hands intertwined, her smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. I asked who the man was. James said he didn't know, had never seen him before. I stared at the photo, trying to process what I was seeing: my wife, my daughter's mother, with another man. That night, after James left and Lily was in bed, I confronted Emma, showed her the photo, asked her to explain. She went pale, started crying, said it wasn't what it looked like. I asked her who he was. She hesitated, then said his name was David, that he was someone from her past, that they'd reconnected recently, but it was just friendship, nothing more. I didn't believe her. The photo showed more than friendship. I asked how long this had been going on. She said a few months, that she'd run into him at a conference, that they'd started meeting for coffee. I asked if she was having an affair. She swore she wasn't, said they'd never slept together, that it was just emotional support, that our marriage had felt distant, and David understood her in ways I didn't anymore. I was furious and heartbroken. I asked if she wanted a divorce. She said no, that she loved me, that she'd end things with David immediately, that she wanted to save our marriage. We agreed to try counseling. Emma cut off contact with David, or so she said. We started seeing a therapist twice a week, trying to rebuild trust, trying to figure out where we'd gone wrong. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Emma seemed relieved that I'd found out, but also anxious, like she was waiting for another shoe to drop. One night, about 2 weeks after the confrontation, I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs and opened Emma's laptop, which she'd left on the kitchen table. I know it was an invasion of privacy, but I needed answers. Her email was still logged in. I scrolled through, looking for anything about David. I found dozens of messages between them going back over a year, not just a few months like she'd claimed. The emails were intimate, talking about how much they missed each other, how complicated the situation was, how they wished things could be different. There were references to before and back then. Then I found an email from 18 months ago, where Emma wrote, "I can't believe, after all these years, we've found each other again." Lily would have been 3.5 at the time. I kept reading and found an email where David wrote, "Does he know the truth?" And Emma replied, "No, and he never can. It would destroy everything I have to protect her." My hands started shaking. What truth? What was Emma protecting? Who was her? Was he talking about Lily? My mind was racing with possibilities, none of them good. I dug deeper and found emails from 6 years ago, right around the time Emma got pregnant. They were together back then. They'd been in a relationship she'd never told me about. In one email, David wrote, "I can't believe you're marrying him when you know how I feel about you." Emma replied, "I have to do what's right. I can't raise a baby alone." The words hit me like a freight train. Raise a baby alone was Emma, pregnant with David's child when she married me, was Lily, not my daughter. I felt sick. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. My entire world was crumbling. Everything I thought I knew was a lie. I needed to know the truth. I needed proof. The next morning I called in sick to work, waited until Emma left with Lily for school. Then I went to a pharmacy and bought a paternity test, the kind you can do at home. I followed the instructions carefully, swiped the inside of my cheek, then waited until that evening when I could get a sample from Lily. I did it while brushing her teeth before bed. She didn't even notice. I sent the samples off to the lab. The waiting period was 2 weeks, the longest 2 weeks of my life. I went through the motions at work, came home, played with Lily, pretended everything was normal. Emma kept asking if I was okay. I said I was fine, just stressed about a project. At work, she seemed to buy it, or maybe she was too wrapped up in her own guilt to notice. Finally, the email came. The DNA test results were ready. I waited until I was alone in my car during lunch break. Then I opened the attachment on my phone. The words swam before my eyes. Probability of paternity, 0%. I was not Lily's biological father. The little girl I'd raised for 5 years, the child I loved more than anything, wasn't mine. I sat there in that car park, and I cried, not quiet tears, but huge racking sobs that came from somewhere deep in my chest. 5 years of love, of bonding, of believing I was her dad, all based on a lie. I didn't go back to work. I drove around aimlessly for hours, trying to process what this meant for my future, for Lily's future. How do you unknow something like this? How do you move forward? When I finally went home that evening, Emma knew immediately that something was wrong. She asked what happened. I pulled out my phone, showed her the paternity test results, watched her face drain of color. She started crying immediately, begging me to let her explain, saying she'd been planning to tell me saying she never meant for things to go this far, that she'd made a terrible mistake. I asked if David was Lily's father. She nodded. I asked if she'd known all along. She said yes, that she'd found out she was pregnant right after David broke up with her. She said David had commitment issues, didn't want children. She panicked and reached out to me. We'd been casually dating on and off. She slept with me, told me. A few weeks later she was pregnant. I asked if she'd ever loved me. She said yes, but differently, that she'd convinced herself she could build a life with me, that I was stable and kind and would be a good father. I asked if she'd been in contact with David this whole time. She said no, that they'd only reconnected 18 months ago, that seeing him again had brought back all those old feelings. I asked if David knew about Lily. She said yes, that he'd figured it out when Emma sent him a photo, that he wanted to be part of her life, but Emma had refused. She'd said it was too complicated. I felt betrayed on every possible level. My wife had lied to me for 6 years, had let me believe I was Lily's father, had built our entire life on a foundation of deception. I asked Emma to leave, to stay with her parents while I figured out what to do. She begged me not to kick her out, said Lily needed both of us. I told her Lily needed the truth. Emma packed a bag that night, told Lily that Mummy was going to stay with Grandma and Grandpa for a little while, that everything was fine. Lily hugged her goodbye and asked when she'd be back. After Emma left, I sat in Lily's room, watching her sleep. She looked so peaceful, so innocent. She had no idea that her world was about to change. She still called me Daddy, still ran to me when she got hurt. I realized in that moment that biology didn't change how I felt about her. I'd raised her. I'd been there for every milestone, every scraped knee, every bedtime story. She was my daughter in every way that mattered. But I also knew I couldn't stay married to Emma, couldn't forgive the lie, couldn't trust her ever again. She'd stolen. The hardest part was telling Lily she was 5 years old. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that her daddy isn't her real daddy, that her mummy lied, that everything she knows is different now? My solicitor and the therapist both advised waiting until she was older, until she could better understand, but I couldn't lie to her too. I couldn't be another person keeping secrets. So I sat her down one Saturday morning, and I told her in the simplest terms I could, that sometimes families are more complicated than they seem, that I would always love her, no matter what. I told her that her mummy had a friend before she met me, and that friend was her biological father, but that didn't change anything between us. I was still her dad. I would always be her dad. Lily looked at me with those big blue eyes and asked if I was going away. I promised her I wasn't, that I would always be there for her, that she could count on me forever. She seemed to accept it in the way children do, without fully understanding the weight of it. She asked if she could still call me Daddy. I said of course, pulled her into a hug and held on tight. The divorce took 4 months. Emma got the house. I got generous custody. I had Lily every other week, plus one night during Emma's weeks. I made sure my schedule worked around hers. David wanted to meet Lily, wanted to be part of her life. I was furious at the thought of him swooping in now, after I'd done all the hard work, but my solicitor said I couldn't prevent it. Emma arranged a meeting at a neutral location, a park near her parents' house. I went with them. Couldn't bear the thought of Lily meeting this stranger without me there. David was tall, sandy-haired, just like in the photo Emma had shown me. He looked nervous, kept running his hands through his hair. He shook my hand, thanked me for coming. I wanted to punch him, wanted to scream at him for being a coward, for abandoning Emma and Lily, but I stayed calm for Lily's sake. She was hiding behind my legs, peeking out at this new person. Emma introduced them, said, "This is David, a special friend of Mummy's." Lily whispered hello. David crouched down to her level, said he'd heard so many wonderful things about her. They talked for a bit, awkward, stilted conversation about Lily's favorite colors and whether she liked dinosaurs. David had brought her a stuffed triceratops. She accepted it politely, but didn't warm to him. After 20 minutes, Lily tugged on my sleeve, said she wanted to go home. I picked her up, told Emma we'd see her next week. David looked disappointed, but didn't push. Over the next few months, David tried to build a relationship with Lily. Emma would arrange meetings. I usually wasn't there, couldn't stomach watching him try to play dad. Lily was polite to him, but never connected with him the way she did with me. She'd come home from visits with David and Emma and tell me about her day, barely mentioning him. Emma told me David was frustrated, said Lily didn't seem interested in bonding with him. I told her, that's what happens when you force a relationship. You can't manufacture a connection. About a year after the divorce, Emma told me she and David were getting serious, that he'd proposed, that they were planning to get married. I felt a surge of anger, but also relief. Relief because it meant Emma was moving on, building a life with the man she'd actually wanted all along. Anger because Lily would have to adjust to yet another change. Lily was 6 now, old enough to understand more. She asked me one night during our bedtime routine if David was going to be her new daddy. I told her no, that she already had a dad, me. She smiled, said good, because I only want one daddy. I felt my heart swell, told her I only wanted one daughter, hugged her tight, tried not to let her see the tears in my eyes. Emma and David got married in a small ceremony. Lily was a flower girl. She looked adorable in her little dress, but she clung to me the whole time, didn't want to stand with Emma and David. David tried to be a good I'll give him that. He was involved, attended school events, bought Lily gifts, but there was always a distance between them, a lack of genuine connection. Meanwhile, Lily and I stayed close. She told me everything about school, about her friends, about the boy who pulled her hair on the playground. I helped with homework, taught her to ride a bike. When she was 8, Emma sat me down, said David wanted to formally adopt Lily, wanted to make their family official, wanted her to take his last name. I said absolutely not. Emma argued that it would be better for Lily to have a cohesive family unit, that David was her biological father and deserved to be recognized. I said David had given up that right when he walked away. I reminded Emma that I'd been there from day one, that I'd earned the title of father, that biology didn't trump 5 years of nappies and nightmares and love. She backed down, didn't bring it up again. Lily started asking questions. As she got older, wanted to know why her mummy and I weren't together, wanted to understand the full story. I told her, version's always honest but gentle. By the time she was 10, she knew the whole truth, that Emma had been with David before me, that I'd raised her believing she was mine, that the DNA test had revealed the truth. She asked if I was angry. I told her I'd been angry at Emma and David, but never at her, that she was the best thing that had ever happened to me, that I wouldn't change anything. She hugged me tight, said I was the best dad in the world. I told her she was the best daughter. Nothing else mattered. We had each other, that was enough. Now Lily is 15. She splits her time between my house and Emma's. She's polite to David, but they've never developed a close relationship. She calls me when she needs advice, when she's upset, when she's happy. Lily started asking questions. As she got older, wanted to know why her mummy and I weren't together, wanted to understand the full story. I told her, version's always honest but gentle. By the time she was 10, she knew the whole truth, that Emma had been with David before me, that I'd raised her believing she was mine, that the DNA test had revealed the truth. She asked if I was angry. I told her I'd been angry at Emma and David, but never at her, that she was the best thing that had ever happened to me, that I wouldn't change anything. She hugged me tight, said I was the best dad in the world. I told her she was the best daughter. Nothing else mattered. We had each other, that was enough. Now Lily is 15. She splits her time between my house and Emma's. She's polite too David, but they've never developed a close relationship. She calls me when she needs advice, when she's upset, when she's happy. Emma and I are civil. We co-parent effectively. We attend school events together. We coordinate schedules. We do what's best for Lily, but we're not friends. We'll never be friends. David has largely faded into the background. He's there physically in Lily's life, but emotionally he's a stranger. She's polite at family dinners, but she doesn't confide in him, doesn't seek him out. Last month, Lily asked if she could legally change her last name back to mine, Emma and David's. She wanted my surname, wanted to make it Official that I was her real dad. I told her she didn't need to change her name, that I knew she was mine and she knew I was hers, that paperwork didn't matter, but she insisted, so we started the process. The day the paperwork came through, Lily and I celebrated, went out for dinner to her favorite restaurant. She showed me the document with her new name, kept saying, "Look, Dad, it's official now." I told her it had always been official, that from the moment I'd held her as a baby, she'd been mine, that no test, no reveal, no truth could ever change, that she cried. I cried. We were a mess. Looking back on everything, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the years of anger and confusion, I realized that the DNA test didn't destroy my relationship with Lily, it clarified it. I'm not her biological father, but I am her dad. I'm the one who showed up every single day, who loved her unconditionally, who chose her over and over again. That's what makes a parent. Emma and David robbed me of the choice to know the truth from the beginning, but they couldn't rob me of my relationship with Lily, couldn't erase the bond we'd built. David may be her biological father, but he'll never be her dad. That title is mine. I earned it, and nothing, not a DNA test, not a lie, not anything, will ever take that away from me. The end.